Hi, my name is Michaela Miley, and this is a presentation on the world-renowned photographer Henri Cartier-Bresson. This is a quote by Henri himself, and it really gives you an idea of how passionate he was about being a photojournalist and being able to go around the world and take pictures of what he saw, and he really had the chance to express how he felt through the pictures. His images spoke of a universal human condition and captured something remarkable or emotionally engaging in scenes taken from daily life. He really wanted his photographs to be looked at the same way he took them, with a lot of heart and a lot of thought. Henri was born on August 22, 1908 in Chanteloup, France. He was the oldest of 5 children and born into a wealthy family. Because of his early love for the arts and literature, he rebelled against his family's ways. They were very formal, and they wanted him to follow in the footsteps of his father as a textile manufacturer. Henri knew the one thing his heart desired, and that was art. At the age of 19, he began his endeavors into the art world. He began a 2-year stint studying painting under noted early Cubist André Lotte. He then went to Cambridge University to immerse himself further in art and literature courses. After being released from the army in 1931, Henri embarked on a hunting trip to Africa. While there, Henri realized that he had no interest in actually eating what he had hunted, and eventually grew tired of the sport and gave it up. Although Africa didn't have much to offer him in the hunting aspect, it did open up a whole new door to him in the art field. He saw the world in a different perspective, and it really sparked his flair for photography. Henri had his first photo exhibition at the Julian Levy Gallery in New York. Here is where he really got to showcase his love for surrealism. His dreamlike photographs really captured the eyes of many people. In 1934, Henri shared a joint expedition with photographer Alvarez Bravo in Mexico. Henri exposed Mexican culture to the world. He indulged himself into the artistic and revolutionary atmosphere of Mexico. His photographs really expressed both political and aesthetic concerns. 6 years after the exhibition in Mexico, Henri was taken prisoner of war in 1940. He tried to escape several times, and finally on his 3rd attempt he was successful. 1 year after his escape in 1943, Henri participated in a French underground photographic unit assigned to record the German occupation and retreat. Because of Henri's traumatic experience of being taken prisoner, he felt that he could relate to the situation most and decided that he would make a film for the U.S. Office of War Information called Le Retour, which means the return in English. It dealt with the return to France of released prisoners of war and deportees. Henri was very enthusiastic about filmmaking, and he credited a lot of film to his knowledge of photography in general. His enthusiasm for filmmaking was further gratified from 1936 to 1939. He had the opportunity to work as an assistant to the film director Jean Renoir in the production of Une partie de campagne, which means a day in the country in English. Life magazine was one of the first magazines to really publish Henri's photographs. They commissioned him to go all around the world, taking photos of how he saw things from his vision, and how he wanted the world to see his vision, that things on the surface are not always what they seem and they have a deeper meaning. Another one of his accomplishments was being one of the 3 founders of the Magnum Photo Agencies. The Magnum Photo Agency was intended to give its members independence from magazines, which until then had held on to the rights of photographs produced on assignment. Magnum photographers pitched group projects to publications and focused on long-term personal projects. They were funded by the resale of their own images through the Magnum archive. Although Henri had published many books throughout his career, the one that stood out the most and had the most influential impact on the world was his photo book called The Decisive Moment. It was a huge success that captured images from Europe, to India to the East, and it really outlined his philosophy as a photographer. He looked at the subject, composition, and technique. Major world events and everyday moments told a powerful human story through all the photos in the book. This image is captured during the avant-garde movement in Mexico. This was for an exhibition he did with photographer Alvarez Bravo. It was meant to really capture the enduring archive of Mexican life and their culture. The man's clenched fists and half-dressed body represent a sense of suffering, and because his face is concealed, it erases a sense of individuality. He seems to represent the collective Mexican worker. This photo also has a beautiful composition of light and dark tones throughout it. This photograph is significant because it is one of Henri's first showcases of his mini street photography pictures. Within the context of surrealism, he really captured the randomness of daily life. This is one of Henri's very symbolic pictures. This is a picture of Paris workers during the Great Depression. They seem to be carefree and paying no attention to the possible future of their own country. Henri spent a lot of his time in India and Asia while a member of Magnum Photos. This photo was taken in Rangoon, and it was when Life magazine asked him to go to China, where the nationalist forces were losing ground to the communist army of Mao Tse-tung. He was on his way to work one morning and just happened to stumble upon this group of frantic people outside of the bank, and he snapped the photo. Because of the value of local currency going down, the banks decided to give out a certain amount of gold per person. So you can see the sheer panic of change throughout this group of people. This is one of Henri's very famous photos from his photo book, The Decisive Moment. This photo was captured in Spain during the Civil War. This really shows the spontaneity and resiliency of the children, because while all of this war is going on around them, they still manage to be happy and thankful that they're alive. This is a very famous example of an important period in the history of photography. Street photography was new, and this is one of the first. He really captured the everyday life of regular people, even children. Henri was a realist and believed that photos should not be manufactured or staged, and it is very geometrical and straight-lined with a light to dark composition. This photo really showcases how real Henri was with his street photography. This was during the Mexican Revolution, and it shows a man holding what looks to be like a child on the ground, and it really just shows the poverty. He wanted to open up the world's eyes to what was going on around it. This is another street photograph by Henri that really captures the essence of humanity, and that there's a man laying on the ground and no one knows if he's conscious or not, and this woman is just an onlooker, not helping. This photo really embraces contemporary and modern art. This really exemplifies surrealism with its high vantage point, and the man moving on the bike is just a blur, like dreamlike figure, and the curving staircase makes it also a dreamlike effect. This photo that was taken while he was in Mexico for his exhibition is also very surreal in the fact that it looks like the woman is a part of the door or coming out of the door. It makes you think beyond the surface of the image. This is one of Henri's very first pictures. While he was traveling in Spain, he met a trio of girls and had them model for him, and they offer a wealth of contradicting gestures and facial expressions. He stayed in Spain for about a year, furthering his photographic work. This photo was spontaneously taken by Henri in Germany after the victory of the Allies. It is a perfectly timed photograph that really captures the essence of all the people in the crowd disliking this woman and man for being former Gestapo informers. This photo was taken during the presidential campaign, and it's a group of people who are supporting Nixon, holding up signs and expressing their feelings towards the debate of who should be president, and Henri really captures that with his street photography, the raw thoughts. This is one of Henri's most reproduced images that he's done, and it's just a very simple street photograph of two men peeking through a screen, and the simplicity of it really just gives it that human feel of his philosophy of just shooting things of everyday life. This photo is from his book, The Decisive Movement. Henri captured this picture to make it look as if this boy was in some kind of pain or horrific situation, but in reality, the boy was just going to catch a ball he had thrown into the air. So it really gives you an idea of how Henri likes to make you think twice about a photograph. This is also a photograph from his book, The Decisive Moment. The background of this picture is a very tall wall with geometric squares and shapes, and it's very harsh. And the contrast to that is these boys in the front of the picture who just seem to be laughing and playing, unaware of their surroundings. This man impacted the history of photography greatly, and even though his parents were against him getting into the art field, he had such a passion for it. He strived for it and worked hard to become the photographer that he was. One of the things that I think helped him put a lot of emotion and himself into the pictures was he was a prisoner of war, and he experienced a lot while being a prisoner of war. He was the one who changed photojournalism forever. He put a new turn on it where he made it very personal and put emotions into it, and he wanted the person looking at the photograph to really think about it deep in thought and think about other meanings that it could have. Also, becoming one of the 3 founders of the Magnum Photo Agency didn't only give himself freedom, it gave the photographers around him freedom, and it gave him a good name and good credit. He was also one of the men who really introduced us to street photography and surrealism and putting your own turn on pictures and making the outcome of thoughts different than what the picture is revealing to you. He wanted to photograph everyday life of normal people and turn it into something bigger. Throughout many of the books he had published in his career, The Decisive Moment was by far one of the most impactful books throughout the world, and it really made him famous and gave him a name as a human, and he really changed the direction that photography was going in, and he made it more personal to the subjects that he was photographing. He wanted to give them a face and a meaning.